And now Reuters is saying the Russians are going to plant stories with Trump of election fraud. So there's no election fraud, but the Russians are going to take the election over. And if you see stories about Clinton fraud, it's the Ruskies. That's Reuters today. U.S. vote authorities warned to be alert to Russian hacks, fake fraud. Meanwhile, we hear that they want to strike and put up a no-fly zone, which is an act of war. The head of the Joint Chiefs, General Dumford, told him that 2 weeks ago. The head of the Army a week and a half ago. Milley says, prepare for a war as big as World War II. These are quotes. You've heard us play the clips probably 20 times. And that's why it's a perfect time to have James Wesley Rawls on, former Army intelligence, best-selling author, heads up survivalblog.com, probably the top survival blog site out there. We have Colonel Schaefer from London Center joining us, the former head of the anti-Al-Qaeda unit, who first exposed basically the entire Benghazi story. And they called him in after he was on the show 4 years ago and basically threatened him with more than just his job when he brought that out. But you know what? He's a patriot. He told the truth and it has been proven absolutely on target. But we have Russian warships filmed off coast of Britain as Royal Navy shadows Syrian-bound vessels through English Channel. You've got Deutsche Bank about to implode. This is an incredible time to be alive. And you've got these different power structures that are on a collision course. You have China meeting with the head of the Philippines, giving them full honors. Obama has to get off the back of the plane. Philippines says it's going to merge with China now, give them bases. I mean, this is the type of stuff that starts world wars. And by the way, we've gone from World War being a big possibility a year ago to now looking like, oh my gosh, I hope it doesn't happen. Why is it happening? James Wesley Rawls, survivalblog.com, best-selling author's latest novel titled Land of Promise. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Alex.
I mean, do you think I put it out there accurately? Or, I mean, where are we right now?
Yeah, you've summed things up pretty well. We are living in very perilous times. Things seem to be spinning out of control much faster than the powers that be can handle them. They've created these structures, these forces in the world that are now beyond their grasp. They created things. They created ISIS, for example. They created the civil war, which became a regional war in Syria. And all of these things have spun out of control. It's like Yeats' poem, you know, spinning and spinning in a widening gyre. That's the situation we're in now. And we are, as you mentioned, very near the brink of a third world war. And we have Hillary Clinton, for the sake of political gain, playing brinksmanship, pushing toward activating a no-fly zone over Syria, which would indeed be a severe provocation. All it takes is one or two Russian aircraft being shot down, and it'll be game on. We are living in very, very perilous times.
I go to the psychology, the criminology, and I know you don't like to brag about yourself, but I've talked to a lot of pretty high-up folks, and they said, hey, you want to have somebody on who's smart? It's James Wesley Rawls. And I've been interviewing you for 15 years, but, I mean, you know what you're talking about. You're a smart guy. I'm a smart guy. But I want to think we're wrong, but then all the other smart guys concur. This is the craziest thing they've ever seen. The top brass are telling Hillary and Obama and everybody back off. This is going to cause World War III, and they don't seem to care. And then I go to the psychology. It's now come out in the WikiLeaks that and the FBI's released documents as well that she steals furniture everywhere she goes. She steals, you know, basically silverware when she's in your house. I'm saying this shows serious mental illness when someone is a kleptocrat. On top of all this, she clearly is out of her mind.
Yeah, not only is she running a kleptocratic system, but when she's personally a kleptomaniac, what does that tell you? I cannot believe that this woman is being seriously considered as a presidential candidate. And with just the torrent of information that's coming out of WikiLeaks right now, from within the DNC, from within the Clinton Foundation, it's just absolutely boggles the mind to think that she's being considered seriously. We have a situation where we may have a manipulated presidential election may have a split outcome with a difference between the popular vote and the electoral vote. And we have a kind of a criminal power structure in place right now that's willing to either collapse the system or bring the world to another world war just for the sake of furthering their own power. That's how absolutely corrupt and evil they are.
And it's all about control. That's what Trump says. Working with Russia and others would be better for everybody economically. Instead, they want to topple it. George Soros admits he's trying to overthrow it. And it just seems to be no end. And speaking of psychology, I'm sure you've read it. He's done interviews where he said, when I was a young man, I believed I was the Messiah, but I had to keep it to myself because I don't want to be locked up. And he goes, now I do realize I'm kind of a Messiah of a type, but he's not the Messiah of the Bible. He's the Messiah of destruction.
Wow. It's amazing to see so many people with such corrupt morals and so downright sociopathic or psychopathic rise to levels of power and influence where the most power-hungry amongst them are actually the ones who want to be behind the scenes.
That's right. In fact, they had a big Psychology Today article yesterday. I saw a couple of them making fun of me saying she's a psycho. I mean, she brags about killing people and destabilizing all of Africa and steals 94% of the Haitian money for herself. She's a monster.
Oh, I agree. I agree, absolutely. Getting back to today's headlines, Alex, I wanted to underscore what happened with the Internet DDoS attack this morning, primarily on the East Coast.
Yes, I haven't even mentioned that. Giant attack, huge outages.
Yeah, the article just came out an hour ago on theatlantic.com that describes how that might have been carried out. Apparently, the amount of hacking that's been going on for the last 10 years or so has been very carefully calculated, and it's been very insidious in that it has been injecting a malware into systems throughout the Internet, not just on major servers, but also apparently on what's called the Internet of Things, which refers to the processing power of all of the distributed Internet-connected computers that might be vulnerable. A lot of those have passwords that are just kind of burned in. They're what they call hard password, hard-coded. And systematically, over the last 10 years, a lot of those processors, some of them quite small, but have been co-opted. But when you harness all that computing power together, it gives a hacker the ability to have a tremendous power to create what's called a ping flood, which is a distributed denial of service attack.
A giant zombie attack.
I know my website has been attacked with ping floods, and I'm sure yours has as well.
Yes.
And I think that the conclusion that the author in The Atlantic has drawn may be correct. And what we may be seeing is just the beginning. That may just be a test of what might be unleashed in the event of a global war.
Now, James, let me go there with you because I'm so glad you raised this. This was a big central point this morning. It hit me when I saw this news, and I predicted this. In fact, I did it last week. I said they claim the Russians are going to hack our election. They claim they already have. They say under new doctrine, we can physically attack you, not just launch a cyber attack. Biden said we're going to hit you with something incredibly hard to teach you a lesson. That was last week. He said that on Meet the Press. And I said, look, the Russians have been standing down. They've been smart playing chess here, not getting lured in.
Right. Well, we've been playing checkers while they've been playing chess.
And expanding. So here's my theory here, because I rarely do theories, but I want your view on this. Clearly, if I was the globalist, I would actually launch an attack against us, claim it's the Russians. They've already handed the Internet DNS control over to this UN consortium. Then we have this big Internet war. The UN comes in, to rescue us or whatever, and then they use that to disrupt the election, claiming there's giant Internet outages because of a war, a cyber war with Russia.
That's quite conceivable, and I hadn't even thought of that particular chain of events, but that very well could happen.
Well, just getting into their psychology, how they always do things to themselves and blame their enemy, or Hillary's a Russian, agent and Podesta gets money, so they blame Trump. They're always blaming people for what they themselves are going to do, and then that is self-fulfilling. See, the Russians hit us.
Well, yeah, it certainly fits with the Hegelian dialectic. And just to step back for just a minute about this particular ping flood attack, if you look at Kaspersky.com and have been watching for the last couple of years the general trend on hack attacks, the vast majority of them are not coming from Russia. They're coming from China. In fact, you can see it in real time if your viewers and listeners look at Kaspersky.com. It's KASPERSKY.com. They have a real-time map, a global map that shows hack attacks. And it's quite enlightening to see the frequency of the attacks coming out of China.
Now let's wargame that again.
There's a lot more going on than what we're being told by the mainstream media.
We're wargaming this. Survivalblog.com, James Wesley Rawls. I'm interrupting because you're so on target here. That's my next question. China is openly chewing us out, openly treating Obama bad on the tarmac, openly in our face, belligerently moving into the South China Sea. As I mentioned, big deals now with the Philippines, unprecedented since World War II. So I wargamed what they're setting up with Russia, but absolutely, could it be that China's launching real attacks? And as you said, the traffic maps show that is indeed the case.
Well, I believe so. And if you look at Chinese intentions versus Russian intentions, the long-term goal for Tsarist Russia, then Soviet Russia, and now independent Russia has always been to seek warm water ports for their navy and for shipping. That's always been their goal. China has basically taken on what used to be the long-term goal of Japan, which is to create what used to be called a Greater East Asia prosperity sphere. And if you look at what's going on with their construction of man-made islands in the South China Sea, and now most recently with their détente with Duterte's government in the Philippines, it's obvious that they're pushing out into the Pacific. They want to control trade, and they want to have naval power throughout at least the Western Pacific, but perhaps the entire Pacific region, and then down around to India. I think that's their long-term goal.
Wow,
now,
James
how
Wesley.
How they're going to go about that is not clear.
James Wesley Rawls, I want to, in the next 5 minutes, let you continue to roll with this. In your gut, your deep research, your sources, you've been on target, just frighteningly so. What do you think's about to unfold in the next 17 days and then after that? Because big banks getting ready to go under, like Deutsche Bank, they say 50 times bigger than Lehman Brothers. I mean, clearly all the planets are aligning historically for all hell to break loose.
Well, to mention Deutsche Bank, for example, their hedge book is absolutely enormous. It's if you include both the traditional derivatives, OTC derivatives, and especially the credit market derivatives, where they have basically a giant casino going on in terms of bets in terms of which way interest rates are going to move. In total, it's about $75 trillion notionally in derivatives, which is more than all the money in all the world. So the potential fallout of a derivatives implosion are almost incalculable at this point. The counterparty risk is huge, and as I've mentioned in my blog, I think the end result might not be just giant banks like Deutsche Bank going under, but entire nation states going under. We could see the collapse of entire nation states through, if nothing else, just votes of no confidence, but we could see entire nations go under in the wake of a derivatives collapse. And the derivatives market, I think, is just emblematic of the overall power structures that have built up in the banking world, in the world of finance and arbitrage, counter trade, all of it altogether it's almost difficult to grasp just how much power has been accumulated by a very small number of international banks and how they have co-opted political processes. They've co-opted entire national economies, entire currencies. It's all basically under their thumb at this point.
James Leslie Rawls is our guest. I am listening to him speak while I look at the latest article that just went up on Infowars.com. I filed an emergency video Saturday titled "The United States is Technically at War with Russia." Now, top British general has now come out and said, we are technically at war with Russia, and the end of life as we know it is about to happen. These are quotes, and I'm not tooting my horn, but, I mean, when I looked at the new doctrine, the announcement that they're going to hit Russia with a cyber attack, telling them they would, saying we may hit you physically. When you announce we're about to hit you, and including with classical munitions, physical munitions, that is a declaration. That is a game on guard, I'm coming at you under international law. And now the top general has come out and said that technically the U.S. is now at war and that Russia may invade, almost like Hitler invaded Russia with Barbarossa when he knew the Russians were about to counterstrike or launch an offensive. I mean, I cannot believe we're actually sitting here calmly talking about this, James Leslie Rawls, while the average person is obsessed with the NFL.
Well, certainly. Yeah, in this case, it's the United States that's the provocateur here. We're the one provoking Russia. And we've been at it for 4 years with the Ukraine, and that game has turned into brinksmanship. And what's going on with Syria is a serious game of brinksmanship, and there it could very well turn into a shooting war very quickly.
And within 1 hour of them announcing they were going to put a no-fly zone up a week ago, the Russians launched their fleet. I mean, the Russians in history are very easy to predict. I don't know what Hillary, she should just, stick to stealing the furniture from the White House and the State Department instead of World War III. James Leslie Rawls is our guest, Survival Blog.
We live in, Alex. I've long been quoted as saying that we're living in the age of deception and betrayal. And to see politics come ahead of our national interest, even at the risk of nuclear war, is absolutely astounding.
You're right. Stay there, sir. We'll be right back. I'm just, this is unbelievable. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, see, I told you so, that communist Chinese-style net censorship was coming to the web, because it's already here. It's being announced. The way you keep the internet open and free is you get involved more than ever. Go to Infowars.com/app. A new battleship in the fight. Infowars Live, available right now. We're looking for a crew to man it. You going to sit down and play games and be a trendy? Or are you going to be part of history? Don't sit by and let the internet and free speech be stolen from you. Take action.